you turn the fan down?
I did. I contemplated turning it back up. Oh.
Well, while we're in here, it's okay with me if you keep it down because I freeze in here every afternoon that we do this.
Fine.
I know you're in a short sleeve shirt and you have all this heat generating stuff in here, but sitting right under it, I get very cold.
Well, the reason I turn it up is for some reason when I'm sitting like this, I generate more body heat when I react, apparently. So, okay. This one is actually 7 parts. So we're doing parts 1 through 4 today. Only 1 episode is complete.
That's right.
And I also just talked with someone on Twitter who said that they really enjoyed this episode. Not as much as Power of the Daleks. And then he said, well, I know how you guys feel about Power of the Daleks, so take my word with a grain of salt. So we'll see how this one goes. Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time we had the Faceless Ones, the last 3 parts of the Faceless Ones. What all happened on that one?
Well, we finally found out who the faceless ones were. They were apparently aliens. Their planet was dying, and somehow they were kidnapping young humans to transfer their consciousness into their bodies, and this, that, and the other. We literally went 5 episodes without realizing what was going on. It wasn't until the last episode that we finally got it.
It was more that they were like copying their bodies, but they still needed a link to the originals, which is why they still had to kidnap people. Yeah. And we saw that if you break the link before, I guess after a while they don't need the original anymore, but if you break it beforehand, they melt very quickly into a pile of goo.
Goo!
Yeah. Also, a correction that neither of us realized. We said that the other Polly, basically, that they had, we said, oh, well, she couldn't have been a duplicate, and she must have been hypnotized. That is, in fact, wrong. She was a duplicate all that time.
Oh.
So, yeah, we apparently just missed that, because even at that point, I think what they said, the doctor says, like, oh, well, they couldn't have done it so fast. We assumed that meant, well, they couldn't have duplicated her so fast. But he was basically saying they couldn't have brainwashed her so quickly.
Oh, I thought the little spray did that. So
no, the spray, like, freezes them in place, so somehow they duplicated her in a few minutes, and that was it. Okay. So, just a slight correction. It didn't have too much bearing on the plot, mainly because Polly didn't have too much bearing on the plot at a point. Yeah. She was kind of out. But that does lead us to Ben and Polly being dropped off.
Well, we had speculated that since it was back in apparently the 60s, what if this was, dropping them off literally on the very same day that they disappeared? That way Ben wouldn't get into trouble with the Navy. But then we also thought, but if they drop off on the day that they disappear, wasn't that like right after the War Machines? So that meant that the Faceless Ones and the War Machines were literally happening in London at the same time.
Yeah, honestly, it would have been funny if, because they called the police several times. It would have been funny if it was like, yes, I need your help. Look, you have to spare a few men. I don't care about these War Machines or whatever that are running amok.
And then our favorite bit, right at the very end, because the TARDIS had landed in the middle of the runway, it had been carted off, and then after Ben and Polly leave, Jamie and the doctor go to where they were told the TARDIS was, and it's not there. So last thing we saw is they lost the TARDIS. Yeah,
the TARDIS is just gone, which I'm curious how much that's going to play into this next episode. I mean, this next one we have here, we've got 7 episodes to go through, so obviously we'll be splitting it up into 2 videos. But I don't know. It's like, how much of this first episode are we going to take trying to find the TARDIS? It seems like a strange plot thread.
What is this serial called?
This one is called The Evil of the Daleks.
Well, okay.
Yeah. Which, it's been a while since we've had just a true 7-parter. Like, we've had some 6-parters, but I'm trying to think. Maybe I could, if I find our playlist, we could probably...
Yes.
There it is. Okay. So let's see. Let's see. Marco Polo, that was 7 parts. My Planet, that was 6. The Chase was 6.
I think Marco Polo may have been the only one.
Wow, it may have actually been, yeah. Dalek's Master Plan was 12, but that doesn't count.
Yeah, I think that's it. Just Marco Polo.
Yeah, it totally... Okay, we haven't had a 7-parter since Marco Polo.
Which was the second serial of the first season, wasn't it?
Well, it was the 4th serial. Because we had... It was An Unearthly Child, The Daleks, and then The Edge of Destruction, then Marco Polo. Right. So, yeah. Wow, and they felt like such a big thing, but I guess they really weren't. I was just... Maybe because that first one, when we watched all 7 of the Daleks in a row, like, that may have... Maybe that just left such an impact on me, because I'm thinking, like, yeah, when we went back, like... Earthshock was like 4 and Terror of the Autons and stuff like that. I think the only other one was like Genesis of the Daleks, and that was 6 parts. So yeah, we haven't had a proper 7-part episode in a while, and it's a Dalek episode. So
let's hope that they have figured out what to do with them. Other than, because seriously, Genesis of the Daleks and Remembrance of the Daleks were very good. We really enjoyed those.
Yeah,
as did the first one, but. Dalek Invasion of Earth and the Chase and the Daleks Master Plan, to me, don't rise to the level of what we had seen previously.
Yeah. Like, the Chase was... it was fun, at least. It was just kind of goofy. And then the Daleks Master Plan just dragged on and on and on, and there was a Christmas special in the middle of it, so yeah, we will have to see. Now, also, the next serial after this is Tomb of the Cybermen. Which we will be rewatching that episode. But in that episode, they had just come from picking up Victoria. So I'm just going to assume we're going to get Victoria in this. And I believe she's supposed to be from Victorian times.
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah. And as the last little side note, last episode we also had Samantha. And we kind of speculated, maybe she could be a companion, even though we knew she wasn't going to be. But apparently, she was offered the job, but she turned it down because she didn't want to commit to many episodes like that. But she did apparently come back in modern Doctor Who as Queen Victoria in a David Tennant episode. So that was just an interesting little side note.
All right, so I'm looking here at your screen. I'm only seeing 6 episodes.
Yes, because I've downloaded the 6 Recon episodes. And the complete episode, which is episode 2, I've just got the link for that on archive.org. Which, if you don't know, you can find all of classic Doctor Who on archive.org. They don't have the best recons. They're actually quite garbage recons. Look for those elsewhere. But most of the complete episodes, they even have a lot of the animated episodes on there too, right through to the 8th Doctor's movie. So it's a good way... And I'm going to say that's not piracy, so it's on archive.org. That can't be piracy, right? And
if it's up and running and people are using it, it can't be piracy.
We'll call it a gray area, and we'll move on from that. So
you're on your own. We don't specifically endorse it, but we don't not endorse it.
Right. With that said, let's get into the evil of the Daleks. Here we go.
Police toolbox, collection 3 o'clock.
Let me see this, please.
It's been signed for.
Yes, so I see. J. Smith. Doesn't really help us, does it?
Yeah, well, I'll just do what I'm told. You better see the airport commandant or someone.
J. Smith, perhaps John, but that's... that's his alias, but they've never used it yet.
As the man leaves the garage, they duck behind the petrol pumps. Oh yes, petrol.
Well,
that's a word I haven't heard in 50 years.
I have been learning some British car terms. Like a bonnet instead of a hood.
And a boot.
Yeah.
I knew they would suspect.
Bit out of our line, isn't it, sir? Battered old police box.
The whims and caprices of our patrons is our line, Mr. Perry.
All of them.
They're patrons. So he found the police box for his patrons. Could they perhaps be the Daleks?
Butterfield unlocks a small box and takes out photographs of the Doctor and Jamie.
And on no account are you to talk to Mr. Perry about any of this.
Okay.
Okay. What does that mean?
What? Yes.
Oh. Waterfield,
No, my attitude may appear
with his sideburns and his attitude, remember he said a hansom rather than a cab, he's from Victorian times.
Oh, okay.
helps to sell to our...
He's got kind of a Victorian cut coat, and he's got the sideburns.
Well,
Tell me what it is.
He enters the room and moves to a futuristic device at the far end and picks up an antique.
man, a lot of stuff was going on around the same day.
I do not know the doctor personally, but we have arranged to meet in the coffee shop, bar nearby.
Well, the tricolores, huh?
Yes. Unfortunately,
Tricolore is the
I am
French
unable to
pronunciation.
keep the appointment, so I want you to go instead, Mr. Perry.
So
Here's a photograph.
I assume him being out of time is why he keeps messing up on coffee bar instead of shop.
Mr. James McCrum.
Now, the Victorian suit wouldn't have looked all that much out of place because there was a kind of Victorian revival during the late 60s.
You know what slightly sucks about this? We know it's the Daleks, because they're in the title.
Now, the question is whether they'll actually reveal themselves by the end of this episode. He appears disorientated as he leaves the room. Disorientated?
Those things are smaller than I thought they were.
Hello.
Alrighty. That is episode 1. Again, it's the same classic twist of, oh no, there's a Dalek, but it's ruined by the fact that it says in the title, the evil of the Daleks, you know they're coming.
Now, again, if you had not told me that Victoria was from Victorian times, I would not have thought about Waterfield being from Victorian times.
Yeah.
Because, again, the Carnaby Street, the clothing shops there, the tailor shops there, and Savile Row and places like that, they were very much into a whole, well, it was actually more Edwardian than Victorian, but still, that I wouldn't have even thought twice about that. But when you mentioned that we think that Victoria is from the Victorian times, then I look at him and I say, wait a minute, those sideburns are not really the 60s.
Yeah.
Sideburns in the 60s would have come down, but they wouldn't have had that Edwardian thing. So anyway, just some deduction on my part. I'm assuming that's where this is going. And again,
Right.
they did wait until the very last frame to reveal the Dalek, which was pretty cool.
It's one of those things where we're kind of... We were basically spoiled on that because we've already seen Tomb of the Cybermen and we have a vague understanding of where Victoria came from.
Yeah.
So, in the same way that, when we saw that the Highlanders was going to be an episode, we pretty much figured out that that's where Jamie was going to come in. So, yeah. But an interesting setup, definitely. And we're still in modern times, so
Yeah,
it'll be
still 67, I guess.
yeah, so it'll be interesting to see like how that all works out. And yeah, a lot of things are just sort of happening like on the same day. Like they had the war machines, somewhere else in town at Gatwick Airport. They had the chameleons, and now we have the Daleks.
Yes. And again, I don't know that any of the writers would have thought of that.
Yeah,
Because they are probably not watching all these episodes like we are.
well,
And they're only vaguely aware that somebody just assigned, hey, Mr. Whitaker, we need you to write some Dalek stuff, and it's just going to tie right into the last one. But again, not realizing that the faceless ones tied in right at the end of the War Machine. So you were right. You've literally got 3 separate things all happening on roughly the same day.
well, and also just because these are the only like contemporary stories, like this is taking place in the then modern day. Like I think the War Machines was the first time where it was like, no, we just landed back in the 60s by chance with the TARDIS, because that was always the thing, was that they couldn't do that. The TARDIS never landed them back there. So it just so happens that happened twice, and then before we could take off again, we have another adventure that we're going through. But it's just all happening at the same time, so that they could fit in Ben and Polly just returning to their lives.
Yeah.
So, yeah. that happened. Bye.
Hey, Doctor, you know you told me outside it's a genuine Victorian antiques? Well, all the stuff in here's brand new.
You've noticed that?
Of course I did. The man's a rogue.
Yes.
When did he have time to teach him to spot genuine Victorian things? What?
This is a time transporter.
Oh, maybe.
You know, the more I see of him, I wonder, is that a wig that he's wearing, or is that his real hair?
Hello, sir.
I don't know.
Are you feeling better?
My name is Theodore Maxtable, and I am the owner of this house. Pray don't get up. I have the greatest sympathy for your...
There's a lot of hair they put on that man.
Since I was the cause of it. We are all of us the victims of a higher power. A power
That may be
more
his real
evil
beard.
and more terrible than the human brain can
Maybe.
imagine. Power? Victims? What do you mean?
They've taken my daughter, Victoria.
Who are they?
there we go.
You will not be kept in suspense.
You have not eaten. You will eat. That is an order. You will not feed the flying pests outside. Answer.
Yes.
Move to the machine. Move.
I don't know why that's really funny. Just basic human orders.
More food will come. Eat it, or you will be fed by force.
I'd be very curious how a Dalek would do that. Alright, this is where we get high.
Dr. Frankenstein's lab.
Well, following the new investigations 12 years ago by J. Clark Maxwell into electromagnetism, and the experiments by Faraday into static electricity. Static? Correct. Waterfield and I first attempted to define the image in the mirror and then to project it wherever we directed.
You mentioned static electricity. That was our last experiment. Negative and positive electricity had failed, so we tried static.
Isn't that the power of the Daleks?
Powers we were going to unleash.
Powers? What are they called, these creatures?
Doctor! Now do you understand?
Oh, yes.
We have your time ship. We will destroy it unless you help us with an experiment.
What experiment? Why do you ask about Jamie?
He is the human being who is to be tested.
Well, this is interesting.
Sir, I didn't mean to wake you.
They need the Doctor's help to evolve, I guess.
1866.
Great hiding.
That's what...
The humans have been told to begin the test. Any delay will result in death. There will be no delay.
Okay. And that's part 2. Well, definitely something new for the Daleks. That's at least something.
But again, the clue, static electricity.
Yeah.
Something to do with the mirrors, and that's the static electricity and mirror gives you time travel or something like that.
That's a bit odd that these two guys in 1866 put a bunch of mirrors together, threw together some static electricity, accidentally created a portal, and the Daleks came through. It's a bit odd, but whatever. You can just sort of move past that.
But now, again, for a 15-year-old kid, this would have... I know it's not pure historical, but theoretically, I mean, they've gone back into the 1800s. This would have caught my attention so much better than some of the other stuff that we've seen.
Yeah.
And granted, we've only seen a little bit of the Daleks really in this episode, but this is already so much better than the power of the Daleks, to me, personally.
It's definitely... I mean, it's the only historical thing we've had since the Highlanders. And this is, that merger of, yes, we're going back in time, but there are aliens that we need to deal with, in this case, the Daleks. Yeah. Now, I'll be curious as to what this experiment is.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like, okay, the Daleks realize they're missing something, and so they need a human in order to sort of get that aspect into their own being. Now, it's interesting because when we watched The Power of the Daleks, they were acting as servants for a while, and that was actually, that sort of plot point was reused in a Matt Smith Dalek episode, where they were like the servants of Winston Churchill, and the Doctor had to figure them out. This is starting to remind me of a Tenet episode where, like, the Daleks basically needed to evolve into and basically come out of their shells and like merge with humans. So they like created a half human, half Dalek hybrid in 1930s New York on the Empire State Building that they built themselves. But anyway, so it is slightly reminding me of that. So it's just interesting to see sort of these elements in Dalek episodes that came back in the modern episodes. So.
But this is very engaging. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Don't see where it's going. Don't understand who the guy who kidnapped Jamie was. I mean,
that seems to be a brand new sort of element to the story. Whoever that guy is, because clearly he wouldn't be working with Waterfield or the Daleks or anything, because the Daleks need Jamie. Now, it also seemed that they implied that they were originally going to use Kennedy, but because he found out too early, the one Dalek killed him, and now they need Jamie to do it. So just some sort of human, and they've just elected on Jamie this time. I do question, though, how the Daleks know about Jamie, because Jamie came in after the power of the Daleks, so I'm not quite sure how they know.
Continuity? Seriously? Are you claiming continuity?
Yeah, and I'm sure people can say, oh, well, maybe these Daleks meet, like, in their past they met Jamie, but that's in Jamie's future, something like that. Because also, in The Power of the Daleks immediately recognize the Doctor, despite the fact that he just regenerated. Yeah. So there's all sorts of time travel, wibbly-wobbly explanations for that. It just seems a bit odd. It's like, well, wait, how do they know about Jamie? They haven't met him. So, yeah.
I'd be interested to know what that hangover cure is, too.
Yeah, it was some sort of, carbonated water or something like...
Seltzer of some kind. Alka-Seltzer.
Yeah.
Which is theoretically good for hangovers because it does have, aspirin and the carbonation in it.
Yeah. I'm also curious if the TARDIS has also been taken back. Probably not, though. No. It's probably still in 1966. So,
but I will say, too, again, this is something that even as a teenager I would have known. In the 1860 to 1890 time period, we do begin to see a lot of literature become the foundation of science fiction. You got your Jules Verne, you got your H.G. Wells, you got even Edgar Allan Poe and Conan Doyle. So this, again, to me, ties into that because you've got the doctor's lab there, even Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. So that's all during the early to mid to, well, I guess you can go up to H.G. Wells goes right up until the 1890s, I think. But so that makes perfect sense to me, and that's why, again, I think I'm enjoying this more than I've enjoyed some of the other Second Doctor. Not that Troughton's doing anything wrong, it's just that I don't think the writing was as good for him until you get to episodes like this.
Yeah, between like this and like the moon base and stuff like that, which was really good. So yeah, I mean, it is sort of that classic sci-fi, almost, I guess, what would go on to later be like steampunk sort of vibe, and then you throw in the Daleks on top of that, which they sort of clash with that because they're not that sort of style. But it's interesting to see that plus the Daleks plus the Doctor.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see a steampunk version or a Victorian version of the Dalek, something created out of materials they would have had at the time.
Yeah, that'd be kind of interesting if like maybe there was a story like the squids got out, but they needed to remake their shells like in this sort of Victorian era. Yeah. So yeah,
steampunk Daleks.
Yeah, future Dalek writers on whatever Doctor. I guess right now Jodie Whittaker is still the Doctor, so that'd be very interesting, especially to have a steampunk Dalek in 2021, like, Doctor Who. Like, that'd just be really interesting. So, yeah, get on that.
All right, part 3. And we're back to recons.
3. Yep, we are now fully on recons. Actually, that's the thing. Sometime either this year or next year, they are going to release an animated version. I think we are just like... We're just a little too soon on these reactions to get most of the animateds.
Where's Victoria Waterfield? I don't know. Yes, you do. I tell you, I don't even know her. You're in the house. A friend of Maxtable's. You must know. Now, listen, I'm
The well-dressed man has another brief attack of dizziness.
I must apologize for that villain Toby. He was telling lies, of course. I shall escort you to the house. You just asked me about Victoria Waterfield. She's in Paris. I'm afraid I haven't introduced myself.
Why am I being moved?
A legit scene.
Pick up your cover.
Why do we suspect that's not really her?
Follow.
Because this is a different cell.
Reconstructed.
Not to be exterminated.
Someone refilmed that scene.
Yeah, I don't think that was the dress she was wearing either.
Yeah. Someone's weirdly reshot this scene.
His mind is, how shall I say, undeveloped. He would not understand you, the Daleks. I mean, he would be terrified of you. Oh, I beg your pardon.
The Dalek enters the cabinet to observe from out of view.
Emma?
I want to see a Dalek, like, pressed up against the door like it's trying to listen.
Kemal takes the iron bar from Maxtable and starts to bend it on his knee. Powerful Turk strips off his waistcoat and shirt and attempts to bend the bar behind his neck. He may be a Turk.
They just said he was a Turk.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Really? Because you said Turk in the description.
Oh. They leave the laboratory and walk to the disused south wing of the house.
Ooh. Nice 3D render of the lab.
You leave well alone. I won't have you ruining everything, trying to rescue Victoria Waterfield. Now you understand?
Plant the suggestion, Doctor.
It is for you, Doctor, to select the major feelings to make up this human factor.
Oh yes, I quite understand.
So the Doctor's going to pick the human emotions, basically. That doesn't sound like a good idea. He's going to have a fight scene, and we're not going to be able to see it.
Of course, all the fight scenes are in recons.
Of course they are.
The Scot versus the Turk. As he rounds a corner, the huge figure of Kemal awaits him.
Oh. Every time.
Jamie approaches Kemal, but the huge figure stands impassive.
Okay. And that's episode 3. A bit slower, but that's alright.
Yeah, I think the Kimmel bending the bar and doing the chopping the table in half, that was a bit of padding. But again, they're trying to establish that he's a big, strong guy. But I mean, obviously, look at him. He's not going to be that big and be knocked out by a guy Jamie's size.
Right. So we get a little bit more that there's some sort of, it's a human factor that the Daleks want, which is interesting that they say it's like, oh, there's something about the humans that have been able to defeat us that we can't understand. It's like, it's the Doctor, you idiots. That's exactly, he's right there. Just you can kill him and just be done. But it's like that's the entire reason you're always defeated. But whatever. So they're going to basically take Jamie's thoughts during his trial of trying to save Victoria, and that's why he had to be in the dark. So he legitimately thought he was trying to save her, and then the Doctor is going to pick specific thoughts and feelings, I suppose, and then that will be what's transferred into the Daleks. I don't know if the Daleks should trust him to pick the right stuff. Now, granted, I mean, it is sort of, like, okay, again, we don't know, like, what exactly the human factor is that they're missing, but I still wouldn't trust him to do that, to pick out that specific thing, because there could be a way that he picks something that gives the Daleks a disadvantage. I'm not sure what that would be either. But...
Well, very much like Peter, Jamie has a sense of justice, and now again, I'm just speculating. I think what's going to happen is whatever they put into the new Dalek from Jamie, it will turn that Dalek against the other Daleks, and it may even sacrifice itself to destroy them and save the Doctor, and then they'll. I mean, that's just speculation, but that seems to be. If I were writing it, that's where I'd go with it.
It could also be that the Doctor might choose fear, because the Daleks don't really have that at all. I mean, the thing is, they don't have most emotions other than hatred. So maybe if the Doctor can put in fear, that could put them at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Also, it's Stephen, not Peter, and you always say that. The actor's name is Peter.
Oh, okay. That's right. Peter Purvis?
Yes.
Okay. Stephen. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
You did that when he was on the show, so... And sometimes I let it go, sometimes I don't, so...
All right.
Yeah.
Never
Just
mind.
as soon as you say Peter, I'm like, Stephen. Right, got it. Anyway.
I'm old.
Nah, but I'd probably do that too. But yeah, like it could be that they want some sort of courage or something from Jamie, because it is specifically what are they gaining from him trying to save Victoria. So,
and I have to say, there's in 1967. This was a theme on one of the Star Trek episodes, the original Star Trek series, where they are trying to take bits and pieces of memory and emotions and things like that, and transfer them into a machine. Ultimately, by the time they get to the next generation, that's what they do with Lieutenant Commander Data, is that they take the memories of Dr. Noonien Singh and make them part of Data's positronic matrix.
Yeah. So maybe it could be something like that. I don't know. They haven't fully described what the human factor is.
Yeah.
Also, as a completely unrelated note, don't they say lieutenant in Britain instead of lieutenant?
Yes.
That's just weird. Because it's not spelled like that, right?
Well, it's Lieutenant. Yeah, so lieutenant.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There's no F.
No.
So, I mean, at least with like aluminium, they do write it that way.
But then again, colonel is Colonel. Colonel. So,
point taken.
Where does colonel come from?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
And sergeant is Serges. Sergeant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the military ranks are just somewhat unusual.
I mean, I guess that's just English at that point. It's such a strange, complicated language.
And that's because it's influenced by so many different things. It is initially a combination, I guess, of German and Scandinavian and the original Britons, but then it becomes heavily influenced by the French after the Norman invasion. But of course, French is influenced by Latin because it's a Romance language, and then yes, English is one of the hardest languages to learn, other than like Mandarin Chinese, because it is just such an irregular language.
Yeah,
and it's like going on with that, the rank of corporal, which again, if I recall correctly, comes from French. In French, it's caporal, Caporal, and in English, it's Coporal. So, how did it translate? How did it get misspelled from one language to the other? And again, I don't know if it was English first and then it became French, I would think it was probably mostly French and then became English. But anyway.
Yeah. You know what was nice about Latin? There were only 17 names. That's it. 17 male names. If you're a female, you just have a variant of one of those 17 names. Yeah. So, that was nice. Anywho.
Anyway.
We gotta move on. Okay.
But again, still very much in that theme of the Victorian thriller. I love the set. Again, I'm directing a Victorian thriller in about a month and a half here. So I just love the sets and the costumes and everything. Very similar to what I will be working with. Camilla aims a kick at Jamie, which Jamie blocks. He twists the Turk's foot and sends him into a chair, which shatters. As Camilla lies dazed, Jamie goes through a doorway.
Wow. Good job, Jamie.
Jamie steps aside. Camilla's own momentum takes him through an open window.
Well, that's just your own fault.
Jamie returns, carrying a rope.
Okay. I was just going to leave him. Yeah.
Throws the rope through the window to Camille. Perplexed, the Turk looks at Jamie and shakes his head. Found his hat again. Jamie pushes past Camilla into the corridor. Or I should say Fez.
Fezzes are cool.
I don't remember your name, but your fez is familiar. There's a light over the portrait. They wouldn't have had electricity. It would have been gaslight.
Yeah.
Name.
Victoria.
Louder.
Victoria.
Inspection is over. Return to your room.
Oh, these are the refilmed scenes. So someone just didn't think about the lights.
Self-preservation is a strong human trait. Jamie and his new friend are determined to succeed. But finding the girl is only part.
He presses a switch and more silver wire travels from one side of the machine to the other. Maxwell moves to the bench and opens a tin, taking a lump of metal from it.
A piece of ordinary metal, of very little value. The transmutation of metal into gold. Changing metal into gold. Now, perhaps, do you begin to understand a little? To possess such a secret would mean power and influence beyond all imagination.
And the Daleks know this?
The secret.
Louder.
Victoria Waterfield. Victoria Waterfield.
Inspection is over.
This is the dumbest inspection.
Just got to make sure that she's there.
I guess.
And I suspect this Dalek is about to get crushed by the Turk.
Well.
Camille picks up a toasting fork and prepares to grab the rope.
Let's fix that one.
What did they do to it?
I'm not sure. Did they burn it?
Jamie move. I will say this, though. I wonder if the actor could actually do that if they had to get a stunt double. I can't do that. I was never able to climb a rope.
Me either. Wow, the CG is funky.
And don't look up the kilt.
Uh.
Jamie and Kimmel turn to see a Dalek emerge. Behind them, the door slowly opens.
And that's part 4.
Now, what's odd there is that you had the Dalek downstairs who was inspecting and making sure she was there, but there appears to have been a Dalek in the room with her.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that was just part of luring Jamie into there for the experiment,
Yeah,
so...
I guess.
we're still not 100% on what the experiment does, but even the Daleks don't seem to really know, like, what part of the human factor do they need?
Yeah.
Which I guess is why the Doctor's trying to figure it out. But does the Doctor know what they need? And of course, the Doctor, was probably thinking, how can he beat them with this?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it's still, I mean, it's an interesting mystery of, like, trying to figure out what they want.
Yeah.
So, this is pretty good, honestly.
Yeah, very well written.
Yeah.
And the direction is pretty good. It's, I mean, obviously, climbing the rope and the some of the earlier stuff was, a bit of padding, but when you got 7 episodes, you got to fill that out somehow.
Part of it, I'm sure, is the fact that it is a reconstruction, so that makes it more difficult to convey. I mean, right there, whoever did this reconstruction had the great idea to CG Jamie and Kemmel climbing that rope, which, I mean, they've had CG for, like, you know, the Daleks and stuff, but they've never done something like that.
Yeah.
So,
but when I talk about the padding, I mean, all right, first of all, they had to climb up there, but why did they need to have the added danger of the railing coming loose? I mean, it's just it was a bit much, but
yeah, I mean, it was.
But that's a minor quibble. So far, enjoying this in a lot. I still want to know what has happened to Ruth's boyfriend. Now, is that Terrell?
Yeah, Terrell.
Why does he seem to go back and forth between, you know, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
Right, and they kind of mentioned, like, maybe he was being influenced by, what was the old man's name? Maxtable. Yeah.
And then what is Toby's part in all this? And now Toby's dead. You know, so
yeah, I guess he was just sort of a henchman for Terrell. So,
but yeah, I mean, there's a couple of loose ends that I'm hoping will be tied up in the last 3 episodes. But yeah,
right.
Right now that's the only thing that we're going. We're not following that part. Everything else seems to be fine. It's a great storyline. The Daleks having literally this is their 5th or 6th time that they've met with the Doctor. Every time they do this, they lose, and so now they're finally wised up to the fact that we must find some way. We must find out why he keeps defeating us. So that's a great storyline.
Yeah.
And again, here we are more than halfway through, and we still don't know exactly what it is that they want or what the Doctor might be trying to provide for them.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, because we kind of joke like, oh, why do the humans keep beating us? It's like, well, it's because of the Doctor, because he outsmarts you every time. But they do almost view him as being human as well. I mean, they don't really know that he's from another planet, but you could also argue it's sort of like, well, he's just a human from another planet, which, I mean, like, which is weird trying to think about that as like, oh, well, humans, they're from Earth, but I mean, it is just sort of they just assumes like, oh, well, you are a type of human just on a different planet.
Again, in other science fiction, especially in Star Trek, they call those just humanoids.
Yeah.
Right? You are the basic human structure, but you might have, you know, like Spock, different ears and different eyes and green blood, and you know, some of the others would have little antenna. I think those were the the Antarians, maybe. But anyway, but yeah, they're humanoid, unlike the Dalek, who are mechanical.
Right. Because they haven't even established. You know, they've only vaguely alluded to the Doctor being from another world. They haven't established much of, like, you know, Gallifrey and the Time Lords and stuff like that, or just the fact that, you know, he has like 2 hearts. Like, that's, you know, later on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, at least at this point, he is just human. And but they have to use Jamie specifically, because they said it's like, okay, well, they need Jamie because he's different, because he has traveled in time, but not too different like the Doctor, who has gone through a lot more than Jamie. So, yeah, we still don't know what exactly the Daleks are looking for from this, but I guess that's sort of part of the mystery even for them, is that they're just trying to find what they're missing. So,
yeah, the Doctor even mentions instinct, because that is something that, although a machine can, you know, go through its algorithms and try to predict certain things, that's one of the things that, you know, is always in the human versus machine themes, is that humans don't always do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And that's, the machines cannot predict the human activity because they simply cannot predict emotions and, you know, instinct and things like that.
Right. Which that seems like the biggest thing for something that could improve the Daleks, because they even say, like, the Daleks fear nothing, basically. So adding a sense of fear is probably not going to help them at all. If anything, you know, I guess maybe this changes sort of later on, when there's one thing that the Daleks fear, and that's the Doctor. Yeah. There's actually there's an episode with Matt Smith where, like, again, they need the Doctor's help doing something, and they say the Predator of the Daleks will help us. So, because it's in all of space and time, the one person that can beat them, their Predator would be the Doctor. So, yeah. But instinct could actually work for something that they need. Yeah. And it would actually be interesting if maybe they sort of won in this story. Like, they do sort of, gain something from this, even if they don't, like, kill the Doctor or anything, They do gain something from this, and how will that affect future Dalek stories? Now, that requires planning ahead, which I don't know if they necessarily did at this time, but it could be kind of interesting. So, all right. Let's see here. Well, we started off with, taking the TARDIS and our patrons that want the TARDIS, and we figured out, that is the Daleks, and they're kind of using the TARDIS more just as a hostage than just outright stealing it, which is interesting. But I mean, I guess it makes sense because the Daleks do have their own time machines, so maybe they don't really need the TARDIS. But they haven't destroyed it outright, mainly just because of the leverage that provides. So that's pretty interesting.
And they left it in 1966. While taking the Doctor and Jamie back to 1866.
Right, specifically. Let's see. And it is interesting that with Waterfield that, if we didn't know about Victoria and that we already knew she was from Victorian times, we probably wouldn't have picked up on those little cues in the first episode that Waterfield is from 1866.
Although they did that very nicely when the Doctor and Jamie are examining the antiques, and he said, this is obviously something that was made in 1866, but it's brand new. It's not nicked up. It's not dusty. And so there was a little bit of a clue there.
Yeah.
But again, of course, having already seen Jamie in a future episode, we can pick up on that. I don't know that I would have picked up on that specifically as a 15-year-old kid.
Well, and that was also in episode 2 that they started like looking at the stuff and it's like, oh, these are Victorian, but they're brand new. Yeah. And so in the first episode, you watch it, and there's slight clues, but you probably wouldn't have gotten that really. Like him not being able to say a coffee bar, he keeps saying coffee shop and stuff like that, or even just his general look. So that was very clever.
Yeah,
I like that.
Again, well written, and the set design, the artistic direction, again, very, very on point. Again, for now, now that we know what it is, we can go back and go, wait, then the second episode, now we can see exactly why they set it up that way in the first episode. So that's very, very good work.
Yeah. Let's see. And then, they were taken back to 1866, and the reason that the Daleks are there was because somehow Waterfield and Maxtable accidentally formed a portal. Again, it is one of those things where it's like, I'm not sure exactly how they do that, but it's sort of maybe a bit more science fantasy for that. Yeah. And it's
all we
totally
know is it had to do with mirrors and static electricity.
Yeah, which I mean that at least sort of leans into it of like, okay, how did these guys in 1866 create this, time machine or portal to let the Daleks through? But they were specifically like using the energy, the power of the Daleks that, which is why that allowed them through. Like later on in Doctor Who, they would say that the TARDIS gives off like Artron energy, and they'll go back and they'll realize, oh wait, we're here. Wait, why are we here? Oh, there's someone who has that same type of energy as the TARDIS, and so they have to figure that out, like someone in history. So it is sort of the same thing here, where it's like, well, because they were tapping into that Dalek energy. Of course, now it makes me think every time, during the winter, I get up out of a chair and, zap my hand. I'm going to think, oh man, Daleks are going to be coming through any minute now. So they've really held on static electricity. Like, I'm curious, like, when that gets dropped. We thought it was dropped, just after the first serial, because like, oh, well, now they have like their own power source, so they don't need that. But now it's sort of a mixture of the two. It's like, well, they have their own power source, but it is still that sort of static electricity that powers them. So, let's see. I mean, we have now had our introduction to Victoria, and obviously, we have that we know that she will join Jamie and the Doctor. Although she hasn't done a ton as of right now.
No, she's mostly, cowered in the darkness.
Yeah, you'd probably be forgiven for thinking that Molly was going to be the new companion.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. Let's see. Jamie and the experiments. Again, it's just interesting to think, like, okay, so, I do like, at least with the Dalek serials now, they're making the Daleks a bit more clever and, coming up with different plans. Like, that was a good thing about Power of the Daleks. Like, okay, the Daleks are basically kind of like infiltrating this place, and they're pretending to be servants. Yes, to their own ends, but how does that, it's just so different from the normal, like, we're going to kill the Thals. Well, that didn't work. Okay, we're going to take over the Earth. Well, that didn't work. We're going to chase the Doctor. That didn't work either. Okay, we've assembled so many allies to wage war across the universe. Well, that didn't work because they all sucked and turned on us. So now they're starting to be a bit more clever. Yes. So I like that. Let's see. Yeah, we don't really have too much on Terrell. Like, who is he?
Again, he's Ruth's fiance, boyfriend, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
But we're not sure how he fits into the manor where Maxtable lives and Waterfield is, I guess, employed.
Yeah.
There's a stable, and again, Toby fits into there somewhere. But that is the one plot line that we really haven't established yet.
Yeah.
The other one is, quite honestly, where did they say where Kamal came from? He's my servant. He's the
I mean, they did call him a Turk.
Yes,
specifically, but I mean, you just have this guy, I guess. I mean,
how do you get a very large, muscular, mute Turk in the English countryside in 1866?
And presumably he just already had him, unless he hired him or bought him or whatever after the Daleks showed up, or was it just that convenience? Like, oh, good, you already have a big strong guy for the experiment. Great, that works out. Anyway, so yeah, that is sort of. I mean, obviously it's a very, very minor point, but it's like, where did that guy come from? I'm not sure. But yeah, the whole thing with Terrell, like, he seems to almost have, like, dual personalities. Yeah. One of them, which is very concerned about everything, it's like, oh, I know that Victoria is in the house, she's captured, and for some reason I have to have Jamie go, or I have to have Toby kidnap Jamie for some reason. So it suggests maybe he knows about the experiment or the Daleks or something like that. Yeah. But then he's got the other side that says, well, no, Victoria's in Paris and everything's fine. And those are starting to conflict now. But we don't know why, and we don't know, like, what does he know?
Yeah. Again, the only thing, and I mentioned it before, is that, again, this is very much in the Victorian era. I wanted to say Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which was also a mad scientist who was trying to, bring, I guess he was originally trying to suppress the bad parts of himself, but instead brought them out in Mr. Hyde. So, again, that all fits in. But as far as the storyline, we're still completely in the dark as to where Terrell is. Now, in the overall theme, it fits perfectly, but in the storyline, we're still going, this is the one thing that is the fly in the ointment, as it were. Yeah,
because he doesn't really have too much of an effect on the story right now. He's just sort of something else that's happening. Like, there was the moment where they kidnapped Jamie, but that sort of resolved itself. So it's like, okay, well, what part does he play in this? You'd almost imagine that if you were going to do that sort of Jekyll and Hyde thing, you would give that to Waterfield. And, he's kind of going back and forth. Part of him is part of the experiment, is going with Maxtable and helping the Daleks. The other part is, like, in denial that any of this is happening. It's like, oh, no, Victoria, she's just in Paris and everything's fine. My daughter is just fine. Which could be very interesting, but that is split up, and Terrell has that, but he has no purpose in the story as of yet.
We can see so far.
Yeah, there's still 3 episodes. It could come back. It's just right now seems very strange. Yeah. So
And while you were talking, I just had an idea. And again, this is just supposition, just a possible projection. One of the things that makes humans different from other species is that idea of self-sacrifice, right? And it strikes me that if Victoria is going to go off with the Doctor, I mean, again, we already know this.
Yeah.
She would not leave her father if her father were still alive. So I suspect somehow that Waterfield is going to have to sacrifice himself in some way so that she will be able to say, I have nothing left here, and I will go with the Doctor because he and Jamie saved me. But again, that's just pure conjecture. From a writing standpoint, if I were David Whittaker, I'd be going, yeah, that would make sense. And of course, it would be first of all, a really nice gesture. You got this guy who sacrifices himself to stop the Daleks, but that also gives his daughter the impetus to say, I cannot stay here. I don't want to be reminded of that. I'll go off with the Doctor. And of course, one of the first things that happens is she lands in the Cybermen.
Yeah. It would be interesting, like, at what point do they decide who will be a companion? Because, Jamie was a very last-minute thing, which is why they had to arbitrarily write him into later scripts, and that meant just sort of knocking him out and stuff like the moon base. So it almost makes you wonder if they were like, okay, we do need a new companion. Well, we have Molly and we have Victoria, and as it keeps going, as the episodes go on, it's like, okay, well, how about we go with Victoria? Maybe whatever reason, maybe she's the one that agreed to stay on the show. Maybe the other one doesn't want to. So it's like, okay, we'll keep Victoria. Well, we have her father who is doing everything he can to get her back. So he's clearly not going to just let her, run off in the TARDIS. So there has to be a reason, and most likely he would end up dying. Which does make this a strange viewing because we've seen Tomb of the Cybermen, that we're making assumptions about what will happen, but we haven't seen the rest of it, but we have seen just after it. It's a strange way of viewing it.
Well, in order to get from point A to point C, we are just speculating about what happens at point B.
Yeah, which, I mean, we'll probably end up doing this again closer to the Web of Fear, because I think if I recall correctly, the Web of Fear was also a sequel episode to another episode with the Yetis and stuff like that. So we're going to be going through that episode like, okay, well, how does this all work into the Web of Fear? And then we won't have that again until, like, Terror of the Autons is, like, season 8, and that was our next episode, so it'll be quite a while before we do another rewatch.
But we're coming up on season 5 now, aren't we?
Yes, this is the last episode of season 4.
Okay,
so
it's going faster than we seem to realize.
Yeah, it is.
You and I have been doing this just over 2 years now.
Right.
And we're basically getting through 2 seasons every year.
Yeah, just about. I mean, I kind of looked ahead, like I have an entire schedule, like, laid out, and I think I noticed, I don't fully know, like, when all the Doctors regenerate in Classic Who, but I have an idea of where the second Doctor regenerates, and I look and it's like, okay, that takes us to, like, August, and then we will move on to the third Doctor. It's like, wow, that was really fast then.
Yeah.
So yeah. Also, I'm hoping that when we get around to rewatching The Web of Fear, if you remember, the third episode of that was Recon. It was the only episode in there that was a reconstruction, and they did announce that they're going to do an animated version of that episode, and it should release sometime this year. I don't know when, but hopefully we get to watch that version.
That would be nice.
Yeah, because that's also the introduction to the Brigadier. So hopefully that comes out in time.
Now, again, this is minor. I've watched you put the Chumblies in there, and you've put in other things.
Right.
So, if I get you a decent picture of me in Agatha Christie's Witness for the Prosecution, which you have seen, and I've told you makes me look a lot like the Brigadier, would you be able to insert that?
Yeah, I could do that.
Right.
So Just now?
No,
Just,
no.
Oh,
But
when we get to the
Brigadier, I'll
Okay.
get you that picture so you can put it in there. Because again, when I first saw him, I thought, wow, that looks a lot like the. Yeah, I had very short hair, just had the little clip mustache, and it's just very, very British looking. Because I was playing Sir Wilfrid Robards, and it's just the resemblance is astounding.
All right. Well, I could totally put that in. I can do a lot of things, not just the Chumblies. So I could put in. I want to like say something as an example, but I can't think of anything. And all right, here's a confession. So obviously, I edit the videos and I edit all the the actual reaction down. I don't watch our discussions. I just sort of leave them alone. Like as soon as I'm done with the reaction, I'm like, all right, I'm done. So pretty much these discussions are unedited unless there's like a moment like in my videos where I get up for a minute. So yeah.
And I don't get to see the reactions until like 3 weeks later, so that's why I sometimes appear to have forgotten what it is that when Alex at the beginning says, so we just watched Tomb of the Cybermen, what was that about? I'm going, oh, wait a minute, yeah, that's what we watched last week, but the last thing I saw was 2 serials before that, so
right.
I'm not losing my mind because I'm old, it's because I have a lag time of like 2 weeks.
Well, and that's the thing is that I do that too, like in the modern reactions where it's like, last week I watched an episode and then like a few days after I edited it, and then only a few days after that I'm filming the next episode. I'm like, what did I watch? I don't remember something. I don't know. Anywho. Let's see. We had Kamel versus Jamie, which, again, it was another fight that we couldn't see. So it's always, every time it's a reconstructed episode, there's some big fight and we can't watch it.
Yeah.
So that's infuriating how that works. But it sounded good. I mean, Jamie lasted longer than I thought he would. He did come out victorious on that one.
That's very much very reminiscent of the Man in Black and Fezzik from The Princess Bride. You have the little bitty guy and then the other bit. And Fezzik was also a Turk, by the way. So maybe that's why I thought of that.
Okay, I did write this down. The slight refilming of those scenes with Victoria, which is odd because it was clearly a new actress and they were doing their best to hide her face and really didn't look like the same dress. I'm not sure why it was just those parts. Like, just when it was her and a Dalek. Like, was this like a film school? Like, you're trying to test something? But why did they have a Dalek? Or did someone film that and then whoever makes these reconstructions and does all the CG, did they CG the Dalek in with that new filming? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because at first I was like, oh, this is a real thing. Okay, maybe something's going to happen, and that's the censorship thing that we always hear about. Yeah. But it wasn't. It was just her, but clearly not the actual Victoria. Yeah. So if anyone knows anything about that, you can put it in the comments, and we'll see it 3 weeks from now. And probably forget that we asked that.
I forget that we asked it, yes.
That happens so many times where someone will be like, oh, man, I can't believe you said that. And I'm like, wait, what did I say? I don't remember. Like, actually, people will reference, like, jokes I made. Like, oh, you made a joke about Tim Curry here. And I was like, did I? I don't remember. I don't remember the context of that either. So, okay. And then, so, Max de Bull.
The butter seems to have slipped off his noodles there at the end. He's gone round the bend.
Apparently, the Daleks are alchemists and are promising him the powers of alchemy to transform metal into gold, which is why he's doing all of this, which is strange. I don't think, like... That's one of those things where it's like, oh, the Daleks are, like, bribing them or something, but it's like, you're Daleks. Just say, do it or I kill you. It's very simple, but... That was weird.
Yes. What I took away from that was that he needs money to continue his scientific experiments, and if the Daleks give him the power to transform base metals into gold, he will have the money that he needs.
Yeah.
Maybe that's being generous, but we'll find out in the next 3 episodes.
How do the Daleks know how to do that? How are Daleks alchemists? I want to know that. So...
Well, and again, this is going to be a major stretch, but starting in the 1940s and right up through the 60s and even right up until relatively modern times, we have been literally creating new elements, right? And again, I'm very fuzzy on the science behind this, but you know that there are things like uranium and plutonium and americium and mendelevium and all these sort of other things, that what they're doing is they're taking an existing element and, I don't know, adding protons, electrons, anybody, but they are literally creating new radioactive materials. So maybe, I can't remember if David Whittaker is one of those people who has a scientific background, but maybe that's what he's thinking, that the Daleks have the ability to literally take what is already an element and then simply enhance it so that it becomes something else. That would be, again, a major stretch on my part here.
Yeah.
But again, that's what came to my mind.
It could also be that the Daleks are lying.
Yes, but that would be more likely that they're.
But your explanation is interesting.
They're lying through their metallic teeth.
Yeah. So, and that just sort of cropped up too. Is like, yes, the Daleks will teach me how to, because they mention it's like, yes, the secrets that, and a big secret that we will tell you and stuff. And it's like, okay, what's the secret? Maybe it's, I don't know, something about the Doctor or just them or something. And it's like, they will teach me how to turn metal into gold. Like, okay.
But again, you have to understand, if they had said that to a scientist in 1966, he would have been way more skeptical than a guy in 1866, because this is a guy who, again, only vaguely understands the concept of electricity, and he certainly doesn't yet understand that you can generate electricity other than static electricity. This is a guy who has not seen an airplane yet. This is a guy who hasn't seen an internal combustion engine yet. This is a guy who does know about steam engines, but even that is only to the point of we're running, obviously, trains with it and boats with it, but they haven't begun to come up with a steam-powered automobile and then ultimately the internal combustion engine. So to say to a guy in 1866, we might be able to do this for you, he would be thinking, that would make me the greatest scientist of all time.
Yeah. Which, I guess he was already, figuring out how to make a time travel out of mirrors and static electricity. So I guess, turning metal into gold, maybe that's not too far off. Yeah. So, could be.
I want to say, that's either H.G. Wells or Jules Verne, the way they get to the moon, maybe First Men in the Moon, H.G. Wells, I can't remember, but they invent a new element called cavorite, which is an anti-gravity material. And again, this would have been written right about the same time, again, late 1800s. So again, this idea of discovering new elements and being able to do that sort of thing, that would have been a huge scientific theme at the end of the 19th century.
Yeah. Which, that does make this all the more interesting for the setting of this, and putting the Doctor and the Daleks into this sort of strange time of starting to figure things out in science, but also you don't have everything. Like you said, they don't have planes or combustion engines or anything like that. But
in fact, if I recall correctly, they don't even have anesthesia or sterile operating rooms and things like that. So, 1866, that's literally a year after the American Civil War ended. So we're talking about literally the Dark Ages compared to what we know now.
A very interesting time to put a Dalek story, and honestly, probably makes this one of the more interesting Dalek stories we've had.
Yeah.
So,
I know a lot of people like the Moon Base, but I got to say I'm liking this one as the best Second Doctor serial so far.
Yeah. So, and we will have to see how it concludes next time. We've really talked a while on this one, actually. I actually looked over like a minute ago, and I noticed we got a warning that my phone is dying, so we're going to wrap this up here. Okay. So, with all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who Classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys next time.